The colony world of New Haven had been calling for help for 17 months. Every day, Commander Kyle Morrison sent the same message into space, begging someone to save them. Every day, the silence answered back. Kyle stood on the damaged wall that surrounded the settlement and looked at the smoke rising from the burned fields. The alien ships had come again this morning. The Vescari, that was what they called themselves. They looked like giant insects made of crystal and bone, and they had been killing humans for 3 years now. This morning's attack had killed 300 people. Kyle's defense guns had barely slowed the aliens down. He was tired. So tired that his bones ached and his hands shook when he tried to hold his coffee cup. Lieutenant Claire Davidson walked up to him. She was young, maybe 25, and her face looked older every day. The war was aging all of them too fast. "Another message is ready, sir," she said. Her voice sounded empty, like she did not believe it would matter. Kyle took the datapad from her without looking at it. He knew what it said. The same thing he had written 100 times before. "We need help. We are dying. Please send ships. Please send soldiers. Please send anyone." The Vescari had cut New Haven off from the rest of human space 3 years ago. They destroyed the relay stations that let the colony talk to Earth. They hunted down every ship that tried to escape through their blockade. The colonists were alone, trapped on their planet while the aliens slowly ground them into dust. "Send it," Kyle said. Claire tapped the screen. The message shot up into space, joining all the others. Kyle imagined them out there, thousands of desperate prayers floating through the void, and nobody listening. Earth was too far away. The other human colonies had their own problems. The Vescari Dominion was huge and old and showed no mercy to anyone. They saw humans the way farmers saw crops, just resources to be harvested when the time was right. Down in the medical tent, Dr. Henry Walsh worked on the wounded. He had run out of most of his supplies months ago. Now he just did the best he could with what remained. A little girl named Sophie sat on a cot while Henry sealed a cut on her arm. She did not cry. None of the children cried anymore. They had seen too much. "Will the ships come?" Sophie asked. "The ones from Earth?" Henry looked at her mother, Ellen Brooks. Ellen had been a farmer before the war. Her husband died in the first attack, back when the colonists still thought they could talk to the Vescari and make peace. "I don't know, sweetheart," Henry said. He had stopped lying to children. They deserved the truth, even when it was hard. That night, Kyle stood on the wall again. Lieutenant Greg Palmer joined him. Greg was younger than Kyle, maybe 30, and he carried his rifle everywhere now, even to sleep. "Scouts saw movement in the northern hills," Greg said. "Vescari ground troops, maybe 30 of them. They'll hit us again tomorrow or the day after." "How many defenders do we have left?" 147 with working weapons. Less than half are real soldiers." Kyle nodded. The math was simple. The Vescari would keep attacking until everyone was dead. It was just a matter of time. "My daughter Laura has a birthday next week," Greg said quietly. "She keeps asking when Daddy is going to stop the bad aliens." Kyle had no answer for that. What could he say? That the bad aliens were stronger and smarter and had better weapons? That Earth had forgotten about them? That God was not listening? Below them in the shelters, the colonists gathered like they did every night. Rachel Simmons, who used to be a teacher, led them in prayer. They prayed to God. They prayed to the universe. They prayed to anyone who might hear. They asked for rescue. They asked for mercy. They asked for their children to see one more sunrise. The prayers went up into the darkness and disappeared like smoke. But far away, beyond the edge of known space, beyond the Vescari blockade, beyond the reach of their desperate signals, something had finally heard. Earth had been silent for a reason. Earth had been building something, and what they built was not meant to save people. It was meant to kill aliens. Somewhere in the black research stations that orbited Earth's moon, scientists had been working on a project, a secret project. They took volunteers and changed them. They built ships using science that normal people said was impossible. They made weapons that hurt to look at. They built demons, because Earth had tried everything else. They tried diplomacy. The aliens killed the diplomats. They tried conventional warfare. The aliens won every battle. They tried asking for help from other species in the galaxy. Nobody came. So Earth stopped playing fair. They went into the dark places where morality became negotiable, where winning mattered more than staying human, where desperate times created terrible solutions. The project had a name, but it was classified. Only a few people knew it existed. The ships were black and wrong-looking. The crews gave up their names and most of their humanity. They became weapons pointed at Earth's enemies. And now, finally, one of those ships was coming to New Haven. Kyle Morrison did not know any of this yet. He stood on his wall and looked at the stars and thought about his colony dying one day at a time. He thought about the children who did not cry anymore. He thought about prayers that went unanswered. He did not know that his prayers had been heard. He did not know that salvation was on its way. He did not know that salvation would look like damnation when it finally arrived. In the darkness between stars, the ESS Vengeance turned toward New Haven and accelerated. Its impossible engines bent space around it. Its weapons charged. Its crew prepared for battle. The demons were coming, and the Vescari would learn what happened when humanity finally stopped asking nicely. The Vescari war fleet hung in orbit over New Haven like a circle of thorns. 12 ships made of crystal and bone pulsed with ugly purple light. Fleet Commander Zathik stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, looking at the holographic map of the human settlement below. "They still fight," his tactical officer said, clicking his mandibles. 17 months of siege. Their supplies must be almost gone." Zathik made the sound his species used for laughter. The humans were strange creatures, soft and weak, but stubborn beyond reason. Most species surrendered when they faced Vescari power. These fragile beings kept fighting with their primitive weapons and foolish hope. "Prepare another attack," he ordered. "Target their medical facility this time. Break their spirit. Then we take what we want from the ruins." The tactical officer began coordinating the attack when every screen on the bridge suddenly screamed warnings at once. "Contact!" the sensor operator shrieked. "Unknown vessel emerging from jump space. Distance 3,000 kilometers." The ship that tore into reality near the Vescari fleet was wrong in ways that hurt the eyes. It was black, but not the normal black of empty space. This was a darkness that seemed to eat light, to pull at the edges of vision like a wound in the universe. It had no clear front or back. The hull twisted and flowed like frozen smoke. Strange symbols covered the surface, markings that seemed to move when you looked at them directly. Where human ships had names and numbers, this vessel wore signs that were older than space travel itself. "What is that?" Zathik demanded. His sensor operator's voice shook with fear. "The design matches no known human ship. The energy signature is wrong. The computer cannot make sense of the readings." The black ship opened fire. What came out was not normal weapons, not plasma or missiles or anything the Vescari recognized. Beams of twisted light, the color of burning iron and dying stars, cut through the void. They struck the nearest Vescari cruiser, and the ship simply came apart. Not exploding, unraveling. Its structure dissolved like salt in water. "All vessel combat formation!" Zathik roared. "Focus fire on the unknown ship!" The Vescari fleet had conquered 40 worlds. They moved with practiced skill, their crystal weapons charging, their shields going to maximum power. 12 ships against 1. They were the Dominion, masters of this entire sector. The black ship killed 3 more before the Vescari could even shoot back. On New Haven's surface, Kyle Morrison stood frozen as alarms blared across the settlement. The defense sensors had detected something happening in orbit, but the readings made no sense. "Sir!" Claire called from the command center. "Something's happening up there. The Vescari fleet is fighting an unknown contact. Energy signatures are off the charts." "Can you identify the new arrival?" "No, sir. It's not broadcasting any identification codes. It's not broadcasting anything at all. The ship is destroying them. The Vescari are losing." Kyle ran to the command center with Greg and Henry close behind. The main display showed the orbital battle, and what Kyle saw made his blood turn cold. The unknown vessel moved through the Veskari fleet like a knife through paper. It was impossibly fast, turning tighter than any ship that size should be able to. It absorbed hits that would have vaporized a human cruiser. And its weapons. Jesus Christ, Greg whispered. Another Veskari ship died, and this time the colonists saw it clearly through the long-range cameras. The black ship's weapons did not just destroy, they unmade. Hull plating ran like melting wax. Internal structures twisted into impossible shapes. The Veskari crew's final screams reached the planet as distorted static before cutting off forever. "Is that one of ours?" Henry asked quietly. Kyle did not answer because he did not know. The ship looked like nothing in the human fleet, nothing in any intelligence briefing he had ever seen. But it was killing the Veskari with a precision and hatred that seemed almost personal. In orbit, Zathik watched his fleet die and finally understood what terror felt like. 6 ships gone now. 7. His weapons scored direct hits on the black ship's hull, but the damage healed. The torn metal flowed back together like living skin. "Retreat!" he ordered. "Full speed, random jump coordinates, go now!" But the black ship had predicted this. It moved to cut off the escape route, its weapons already charged. The remaining Veskari vessels scattered like frightened animals, and the hunter pursued. Zathik's flagship was last. He saw the dark vessel approaching, saw weapon ports opening like hungry mouths. In his final moment, he recognized what he faced. Not soldiers, not warriors, demons. The black ship fired one last time, and then there was only silence in the space above New Haven. Kyle stared at the display as the unknown vessel descended through the atmosphere. Its impossible hull glowed with entry heat that looked wrong, looked tainted somehow. It slowed over the settlement, hovering 200 meters above the central square on engines that made the air ripple and twist. "Should we?" Claire's hand moved toward the defense controls. "No," Kyle said quietly. "If they wanted us dead, we already would be." A hatch opened in the ship's belly, and a single figure dropped out, falling like a stone before slowing impossibly at the last second. Boots hit the ground with a crack that echoed off the settlement walls. The person wore armor that matched the ship, black and flowing, covered in those same moving symbols. The helmet was smooth and featureless, reflecting nothing. Kyle walked out to meet them. Greg and a dozen armed colonists followed at a distance, weapons ready but pointed down. The figure's helmet retracted, flowing back like liquid shadow. The woman beneath had sharp features and eyes that gleamed with something that was not quite madness and not quite sanity. Her smile was thin and cold. "Commander Morrison," she said, and her voice carried an edge like broken glass. "I am Captain Nicole Graves of the ESS Vengeance. Your prayers have been answered." Kyle looked at her. At the ship looming overhead. At the orbital space where an entire Veskari fleet had been erased from existence in minutes. "What are you?" he asked. Nicole's smile widened, and there was nothing warm or human in it. "We are what Earth makes when it finally stops asking God for help," she said. "We are the thing they built in the dark places with dark science when every other option failed. We are humanity's last and worst answer to a hostile universe." She gestured to the sky where her ship waited, that impossible vessel of weapons and rage. "The Veskari wanted demons?" Nicole said. "Earth finally sent them." Kyle felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had prayed for rescue, for salvation, for help. But looking at Nicole Graves and her ship, he realized that help came in many forms. And sometimes the cure was as terrible as the disease. "What happens now?" he asked. Nicole's cold smile never wavered. "Now? Now we use you as bait to kill more of them." The settlement of New Haven had never been large, and 3 years of war had made it even smaller. Now it sat in the shadow of something far more frightening than anything the Veskari had ever brought. The ESS Vengeance rested in the northern field like a piece of midnight torn from the sky, and everyone stayed far away from it. Kyle Morrison sat across from Captain Nicole Graves in what was left of his office, trying to understand the woman in front of him. She looked human enough, flesh and bone, maybe 30 years old with dark hair pulled back tight, but her eyes held something else, something that flickered and burned like coals in a dying fire. "How many more ships like yours?" Kyle asked. "That information is classified," Nicole replied. "But enough. Earth has been busy while you've been cut off from everyone else. And you just happened to find us? We intercepted your distress signals months ago, but New Haven was not a priority until our analysis showed the Viscari were using this system as a staging ground." She leaned back in her chair. "Your suffering bought us intelligence, Commander. I wish I could say something nicer, but that's the truth." The bluntness should have made him angry, but Kyle was too tired for anger. "What now? You evacuate us?" "Eventually. First, we use this settlement as bait." The words hung in the air like a threat. "Excuse me?" Kyle said slowly. Nicole pulled up a holographic display from her wrist. It showed a map of the surrounding star systems with red markers everywhere. "The fleet we destroyed was just a patrol group. The Vescari have a staging base in the Kepler system, 40 ships and support structures. When their patrol doesn't report back, they'll send a battle group to investigate. We want them to find New Haven alive and screaming for help." "You want to use us as bait?" Kyle repeated, his voice flat and cold. "Yes." "For how long?" 72 hours, maybe 96. Kyle stood up so fast his chair fell over. "Do you have any idea what the Vescari do when they attack? What we've already lived through? You want us to survive 3 more days while you set your trap?" Nicole did not flinch. "I need the Vescari to commit their forces, a full battle group concentrated in one location. Then the Vengeance and her sister ships will hit them all at once. We break their spine and cripple their operations in this entire sector. And if they overwhelm us first, if your timing is wrong, then you die, and the mission continues anyway." Nicole met his furious stare without blinking. "I'm not here to save you, Commander Morrison. I'm here to kill Vescari. If saving you helps me do that, excellent. If it doesn't, I'll complete the mission regardless." The room went very quiet. "Get out," Kyle said. Nicole stood smoothly. "You have 6 hours to prepare your defenses. My crew will provide technical support, weapons upgrades, tactical data. Use them well." "I said get out." She walked to the door and paused. "For what it's worth, Commander, I do understand. Before I became this, I was a colonist too. The Vescari hit my settlement on Proxima Station. I watched them kill my family while I hid in a storage locker." Her voice did not waver or soften. "So yes, I know exactly what I'm asking you to do. And I'm asking anyway because we're in a war where mercy is a luxury we can't afford." She left, and Kyle stood alone in his office, shaking with rage and exhaustion, and the terrible understanding that she was right. That evening, Lieutenant Claire Davidson found Kyle on the wall, staring at the Vengeance as its crew worked on the settlement's defenses. They moved with strange precision, these men and women in black armor. They spoke little and never smiled. "The crew gave us new targeting computers for the defense guns," Claire said. "Also ammunition. Some kind of experimental rounds that supposedly disrupt Vescari shields. They wouldn't explain how it works." "Did they explain anything?" "Not really. They're strange, sir. Efficient. But there's something wrong about them. The way they move, the way they look at things. Lieutenant Palmer said one of them was fixing a weapons mount in complete darkness. No light, no night vision. Just did it by touch and memory." Kyle nodded slowly. He had noticed it too. The Vengeance crew were human, but they had been changed by whatever science built their ship. Enhanced, modified, made into something purpose-built for killing. Greg Palmer joined them, looking troubled. "Just got a report from the medical tent. One of the Vengeance crew was helping Dr. Walsh organize supplies. Sophie Brooks asked the woman what her name was, and she said she doesn't have one anymore. Just a designation." Echo 7. "They gave up their names," Claire said quietly. "They gave up everything," Kyle replied. to become weapons. In the medical tent, Henry Walsh worked alongside a member of the Vengeance crew called Sierra 3. The man was perhaps 25, with the same unnaturally steady hands and distant eyes as the others. "How long have you served on the Vengeance?" Henry asked. 2 years, 4 months, 17 days. You keep count? Time moves differently with the experimental drive systems. Standard calendars don't work reliably. We maintain internal chronometers. Sierra 3 organized medical supplies with mechanical efficiency. You're running dangerously low on antibiotics. We've been low on everything for months. This will be corrected after mission completion. Henry studied the young man. What were you before the Vengeance? For a moment, something almost human flickered across Sierra 3's face. I was a student, xenobiology major. I wanted to understand alien life. His expression went flat again. Now I just kill it. That night, Kyle called a meeting of the Settlement Council. 20 men and women crowded into the cramped space, faces drawn and worried. The Vengeance crew has upgraded our defenses, Kyle said. They've also made it clear that we're bait in a larger operation. The Vescari will come, and we need to hold out while Captain Graves springs her trap. How long? Ellen Brooks asked. She held Sophie close, the little girl half asleep against her mother's shoulder. 3 to 4 days. The room erupted in angry voices. Rachel Simmons, the teacher, stood up. We've prayed for rescue for 17 months, and what arrives? Not saviors, but executioners who want to use us as bait. This is insane! This is war, Greg Palmer said quietly. And Captain Graves is fighting it the only way that works against an enemy like the Vescari. By becoming like them? By sacrificing our decency? By winning, Greg replied. I have a daughter, Rachel. You have students. Everyone in this room has someone they want to protect. If 3 more days of hell means the Vescari lose their staging base, if it means other colonies don't face what we've faced, then I say we do it. The argument went on, but in the end they voted. 15 to 5 in favor of cooperation. Kyle found Nicole on her ship later that night. She stood in the hangar bay, supervising modifications to a series of attack drones. We'll do it, Kyle said. We'll be your bait. Nicole nodded. Smart decision. Don't mistake necessity for approval, Captain. When this is over, when the Vescari are dead, I want you and your ship gone from my world. Understood. She turned back to her work. For what it's worth, Commander, you made the right choice. Survival requires hard decisions. Is that what you tell yourself? Kyle asked. To justify what you've become? Nicole was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer, almost sad. No, she said. I don't tell myself anything anymore. That's the only way to keep doing this. She looked at him, and in her eyes, Kyle saw not a monster, but a woman who had sacrificed everything human about herself to become a weapon against the darkness. Go prepare your people, Commander, Nicole said. The Vescari are coming. And 3 days later, they did. The Vescari battle group arrived exactly 71 hours after the destruction of their patrol fleet. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a formation that showed confidence and overwhelming force. 43 ships filled the space above New Haven like a swarm of crystalline locusts. On the surface, Kyle Morrison watched the tactical displays and felt his stomach turn to ice. This was not a raid. This was complete extermination. Vescari fleet moving into orbital positions, Claire Davidson reported, her voice tight with controlled fear. They're spreading out, establishing a complete blockade pattern. No escape routes. Weapons status? Defense turrets at maximum efficiency thanks to the upgrades. We have the new ammunition loaded. Personnel are in defensive positions. She paused. Sir, we have maybe 200 fighters against an invasion force that intelligence says carries at least 5,000 ground troops. Kyle nodded. The math was brutal, but they had known it would be. Where is the Vengeance? Captain Graves says they're holding position in the asteroid belt, 40 million kilometers out. They're running silent, waiting for the Vescari to commit. Tell her the clock is ticking. In orbit, Battle Commander Krathvin surveyed the human settlement through his ship's targeting systems. The destruction of Zathik's patrol fleet had been unexpected and alarming, but the follow-up investigation had found no trace of whatever killed them. Just this pathetic colony, still clinging to survival. Sensor sweeps show no unknown vessels in the system, his tactical officer reported. No orbital defenses beyond the surface batteries. No fleet presence. Krathavin's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. It made no sense. Something had destroyed 12 Veskari ships, yet the humans cowered on their planet with primitive weapons, as helpless as always. Perhaps they had help that has since departed, his second-in-command suggested. Another species interfering? Then we teach them the price of interference, Krathavin decided. Deploy all ground forces. I want that settlement turned to ash within 6 hours. Leave no survivors to tell tales. The Veskari dropships began their descent. Kyle watched them come, hundreds of them blocking out the sun. The upgraded defense turrets opened fire, and the experimental rounds tore through Veskari shields with satisfying efficiency. 24 dropships exploded before reaching the ground, raining debris across the scorched fields. But hundreds more kept coming. "All units, weapons free!" Kyle shouted into the command channel. "Make them pay for every meter!" The Veskari warriors poured from their landing craft like a tide of chitin and fury. They stood 3 meters tall on 4 legs, with arms that ended in plasma weapons fused to their very flesh. Their armor was bio-integrated, grown from the same genetic material as their bodies, and they moved with inhuman speed. Greg Palmer commanded the western defenses, a hastily assembled barricade of cargo containers and prefab walls. His fighters opened fire with rifles and improvised explosives, and the Veskari fell, but not fast enough. Never fast enough. "Contact! Western approach!" someone screamed over the radio. "They're breaking through Section 7! Greg grabbed his rifle and ran, directing fire teams, calling for the defense turrets to redirect. A Veskari warrior crashed through the barricade, its plasma weapon tearing through 2 defenders before Greg put a burst into its head at point-blank range. More came. Always more. In the medical tent, Henry Walsh worked frantically as the wounded poured in. Burns, shrapnel wounds, limbs torn by plasma fire. He had run out of proper anesthesia long ago. Now he just worked with what he had, trying to save who he could, trying not to hear the screams. Ellen Brooks appeared in the entrance, pushing Sophie ahead of her. "Dr. Walsh, they're saying the eastern wall is about to collapse. Rachel is evacuating the children to the shelters, but..." An explosion shook the tent. Plasma fire burst through the wall, and Ellen pushed Sophie down, covering her daughter with her own body as superheated air washed over them. Sierra 3 appeared from nowhere, moving with inhuman speed. The Vengeance crew member had been assisting in the medical tent, and now he drew a sidearm that looked like no human weapon Henry had ever seen. The gun fired once, and the Veskari warrior outside simply collapsed, its nervous system disrupted by some strange technology. "Evacuation route is compromised," Sierra 3 said calmly, even as more plasma fire tore through the tent. "Follow me to secondary shelter." Henry grabbed his emergency kit. Ellen lifted Sophie, and they ran. The battle raged for 6 hours. 6 hours of desperate defense. Colonial farmers and shop clerks standing against an alien empire's military might. The Vengeance crew members scattered throughout the settlement fought with eerie efficiency, each one worth 10 normal soldiers. But even they could not be everywhere. The eastern wall fell, then the northern barricade. The Veskari pushed deeper into the settlement, burning buildings, executing anyone they found. Kyle fought from the command center turned bunker, coordinating what remained of the defense. Claire worked beside him, her hands steady even as the walls shook from nearby explosions. "Western defenses are collapsing," she reported. "Lieutenant Palmer is requesting permission to fall back to the central strongpoint." "Granted. All units converge on the assembly hall. We make our last stand there." "Sir," Claire said quietly, "where is the Vengeance?" Kyle had been asking himself the same question. Michael Graves had promised support, had said to hold for 3 days. They had held. They had bled and died and held. Where was she? In the asteroid belt, the ESS Vengeance and her three sister ships waited in perfect silence. They had watched the Veskari fleet arrive, watched the ground assault begin, watched the settlement start to die. On the Vengeance's bridge, Nicole Graves sat in her captain's chair and waited. "Ground forces are fully committed," her tactical officer reported. "Veskari fleet has shifted to low orbit to provide fire support. All enemy vessels are within engagement range." Fleet composition? 43 ships, as predicted. Flagship is the Dreadnought at the center of formation. Estimated crew complement across all vessels is 60,000. Nicole studied the tactical display. The Veskari had taken the bait perfectly. Every ship, every soldier concentrated in one place, committed to the extermination of New Haven. "Captain," her communications officer said carefully, "the settlement is requesting support. They're being overrun." "Noted," Nicole replied. "Hold position." "Captain, if we don't act soon—" "I said hold position." Nicole's voice was iron. "The Veskari fleet needs to be fully committed. If we strike too early, some will escape. This ends here, or not at all." She watched the tactical display as New Haven burned and felt nothing. She had carved out the part of herself that felt such things. She was a weapon now. Weapons did not hesitate. "Fleet commitment is at 98%, Tactical reported. "All Veskari capital ships are now engaged in the assault." Nicole leaned forward. "Signal the task force. Execute Operation Hellfire." The 4 ships of Earth's darkest fleet came out of the asteroid belt at full speed, and the universe screamed. The ESS Vengeance and her sister ships, the ESS Wrath, the ESS Ruin, and the ESS Malice, struck the Veskari fleet like the fist of an angry god. They appeared on sensors as impossible readings, ships that moved too fast and hit too hard. Their weapons tore at reality itself. The experimental drives built in Earth's black research stations pushed them to accelerations that should have crushed their crews, but the crews were no longer quite human, and they endured. Nicole Graves stood on her bridge and watched the slaughter begin. "Target priority is capital ships first," she ordered. "Maximum firepower, no warning shots, kill them all." The Vengeance's main weapons, cannons built using physics that conventional science refused to acknowledge, opened fire. The beams that lanced out were the color of dying stars, and where they struck, Veskari ships did not simply explode. They unmade. The first dreadnought came apart in spirals of disintegrating matter, its crew screaming across all frequencies as their ship and bodies dissolved into atoms. The second tried to raise shields, tried to return fire, but the wrath was already there, moving with impossible grace for something so massive, and its weapons reduced the mighty vessel to expanding clouds of vapor. Battle Commander Krathven watched his fleet die and could not comprehend what he was seeing. These ships, these impossible human vessels, they fought with technologies that violated every known law of warfare. Their weapons ignored shields. Their hulls absorbed damage and healed. They moved like living things, predatory and precise. "All ships, emergency scatter," he commanded. "Random jump coordinates, retreat immediately." But the human ships had anticipated this. They had positioned themselves to cut off every escape vector, and now they closed the trap with methodical brutality. The Malice caught 3 fleeing cruisers and killed them in a single salvo, its weapon systems coordinating with inhuman precision. The Ruin pursued a pack of interceptors, hunting them down one by one, never missing, never hesitating. And the Vengeance, Nicole's ship, went straight for the Veskari flagship. "Incoming fire, multiple vectors," her tactical officer reported without emotion. "Shields holding at 87%. Return fire, target their command structure." The Vengeance's weapons carved through the flagship's armor like it was paper. Internal explosions rippled along the massive vessel's spine, and Krathven felt his ship dying beneath him. "Abandon ship!" he screamed. "Launch all escape pods!" But even this was denied him. The human ships tracked every escape pod, every lifeboat, and destroyed them with the same cold efficiency they brought to everything. There would be no prisoners, no survivors, no mercy. Krathvin died when the Vengeance's final salvo punched through to his bridge, and his last thought was a terrible understanding of what humanity had become in its desperation. On New Haven's surface, the Veskari ground assault had pushed the defenders to the breaking point. Kyle Morrison fired his last magazine into an advancing warrior, watched it fall, and knew they were finished. The assembly hall was surrounded and burning. The colonists who remained fought with knives and bare hands, but it was over. Greg Palmer, bleeding from a dozen wounds, pulled his daughter Laura close and whispered that he loved her. Ellen Brooks held Sophie and sang softly, even as plasma fire tore through the walls around them. Then the sky caught fire. The Veskari fleet died in orbit, and as the ships exploded, debris began to rain down. But more than that, the entire enemy invasion force suddenly lost coordination. Their orbital support vanished, their command structure went silent, their logistics network collapsed. The Veskari warriors on the ground suddenly realized they were alone, cut off, surrounded by humans who had nothing left to lose. "All units!" Kyle shouted into every channel that still worked. "Counterattack! Hit them now! Hit them with everything!" The colonists surged forward with desperate fury. The Vengeance crew members moved through the Veskari ranks like death given form, their strange weapons and enhanced bodies turning the tide. The defense turrets, now without interference from orbit, tore into the enemy formations with renewed precision. The Veskari, for the first time in the siege of New Haven, broke and ran. An hour later, it was over. The Veskari ground force had been annihilated. The fleet in orbit was nothing but expanding clouds of debris. The system belonged to humanity again. Kyle stood in the ruins of the assembly hall, covered in blood and ash, and watched as the Vengeance descended from orbit. The impossible ship settled into the scorched field like a raven landing on a battlefield, and Nicole Graves emerged. She walked through the devastation she had allowed to happen, her expression neutral, and stopped before Kyle. "The Veskari staging base in Kepler will fall within the week," she said. "We broke their fleet here. They won't recover in this sector for years." Kyle just stared at her. "The evacuation transports will arrive in 48 hours, Nicole continued. "You'll be relocated to a secure colony world. New Haven will be abandoned and used as a forward observation post." "You let us burn," Kyle said quietly. "You waited while people died, while children died." "Yes," Nicole said, no apology in her voice. "I needed the Veskari committed. I needed them to bleed themselves against your defenses, and it worked. We killed 43 ships and 60,000 enemy combatants. That's a strategic victory. That's murder. That's war." Nicole met his gaze. "You wanted demons, Commander Morrison. You prayed for salvation, and Earth sent you what it had. We're not heroes. We're not saviors. We're weapons, built to win a war that can't be won with kindness." Kyle wanted to hit her, to scream, to make her feel something, anything. But he could see the truth in her eyes. She did feel it. She felt every death, every sacrifice, every terrible choice. She just did not let it stop her. "Get off my planet," Kyle said. Nicole nodded once. "Good luck, Commander. I hope you never need us again." She turned and walked back to her ship. Her crew followed. These men and women who had given up names and humanity to become Earth's dark blade. They boarded the Vengeance in silence, and the ship lifted off, its impossible engines tearing at reality as it climbed toward the stars. Greg Palmer found Kyle later, sitting in the ruins of the command center. His daughter Laura was with him, alive, and Sophie Brooks clung to Ellen nearby. Henry Walsh was already back at work, treating the wounded, saving who he could. "Did we win?" Laura asked her father. Greg looked to Kyle, and Kyle looked up at the sky where the Vengeance had vanished into the darkness between stars. "I don't know," he said honestly. "We survived. The Veskari are gone. But what we became to achieve that—" "We did what we had to," Greg said quietly. "Same as Captain Graves." "Does that make it right?" No, but it makes it necessary. The evacuation ships arrived 2 days later, clean and bright, crewed by normal humans who looked at the survivors of New Haven with pity and confusion. They did not understand what the colonists had endured, what Earth had sent to save them, what price had been paid in blood and soul. As Kyle boarded the transport, he looked back at New Haven one last time. The settlement that had been his home, his responsibility, his prison for 3 terrible years. It was just ruins now, populated by ghosts and memories. Somewhere out in the dark, the Vengeance and her sister ships continued their hunt. They would find more Vescari fleets, more enemy strongholds, and they would destroy them with the same cold efficiency they had brought to New Haven. Earth had sent demons to fight its war, and the demons were winning. But Kyle Morrison wondered, as the transport jumped to faster-than-light speed and New Haven vanished behind them, what would happen when the war was over? What did you do with weapons you had made so sharp, so terrible, so inhuman? What did you do with demons when you no longer needed them? He suspected he did not want to know the answer. Far away on the bridge of the Vengeance, Nicole Graves plotted her next target. The ship's systems whispered their readiness in her mind through the direct neural interface that let her become one with the vessel. She no longer dreamed as humans dreamed. She saw only tactical displays, enemy positions, optimal firing solutions. She remembered distantly that she had once been a person named Nicole, that she had once wanted things, loved people, hoped for a future. But that was before the Vescari, before the transformation, before she had volunteered to become what Earth needed her to be. Her tactical officer, Echo 7, approached. "Next target, Captain?" "Vescari supply convoy in the Beta sector," Nicole replied. 15 ships lightly defended. We can hit them in 36 hours. "Acknowledged." Nicole stared out at the stars, and somewhere in the deepest part of herself, the part she thought she had cut away, a small voice asked if this was what humanity was supposed to be, if survival was worth the cost they had paid. She silenced the voice, as she always did, and gave the order to jump. The Vengeance vanished into the dark, and the universe shuddered at its passing. Behind them, in the ashes of New Haven, the colonists' prayers had finally been answered. But salvation, they learned, sometimes wore the face of damnation. And the demons Earth had sent to fight its wars would never stop hunting, never stop killing, never stop being exactly what humanity had made them.